Let me tell you a story that still echoes through the halls of Lagos elite. It happened on a Friday night, in a mansion so grand it could swallow 10 village compounds. Inside, crystal glasses clinked and expensive perfume hung in the air like a bad spirit. Chief Aguyi was celebrating his 70th birthday, and his son, Obinna, stood up with a smile sharp as broken glass. "My friends," he announced, "tonight I free myself from a burden I have carried too long." His wife, Adanna, sat quietly at the corner of the long table, her simple wrapper looking dull against the silk and lace around her. Obinna reached into his pocket and pulled out a crumbled bus ticket. He tossed it across the table. It landed in Adanna's plate of jollof rice. "Go back to your village, you popcake," he said. "This house was never meant for someone like you." The room fell silent. 200 eyes turned to watch Adanna's shame. But what they saw next, nobody expected. Adanna did not cry. She did not scream or throw her plate or run from the room. Instead, she picked up the bus ticket with 2 fingers like it was a piece of fine lace. She studied it carefully, reading every word. Enugu, one way, economy class. Then she looked up at her husband and she smiled. It was not a sad smile. It was not an angry smile. It was the kind of smile a lioness gives before she strikes. The guests shifted in their seats, confused. Why was this woman smiling? Obinna frowned. This was not the reaction he wanted. He expected tears, begging. Maybe her mother-in-law would even slap her for good measure. But this smile, it made him uncomfortable. "Did you not hear me?" he shouted. "I said leave. Pack your cheap bags and go." Adanna folded the ticket neatly and placed it in her purse. "Thank you for this gift, my husband," she said softly. "I will treasure it forever." The room buzzed with whispers. Something strange was happening. Let me take you back 3 years to the day Adanna first arrived in Lagos. She came from Enugu, they said, from a poor family that sold palm oil in the market. She wore faded wrappers and carried only one small bag. When Obinna's mother first saw her, she hissed like a snake. "This is what my son brought home? This village rat?" But what they did not know could fill the Atlantic Ocean. Adanna was not poor. Her full name was Adanna Okeke, sole heir to Okeke oil fortune, the richest family in the East. Her father controlled oil wells that fed half the country. But when Adanna reached marriage age, suitors came for the money, not the woman. They spoke sweet words while counting her father's billions in their heads. So Adanna made a choice. She would test the next man who claimed to love her. She would dress like a poor girl and see if his love was real. That man was Obinna. The first crack appeared 6 months into the marriage. Adanna was washing dishes in the kitchen when she found a receipt tucked inside Obinna's jacket. 5 million naira for a diamond necklace. She knew Obinna's salary. He could never afford such a thing. Her heart beat faster, but not from shock, from curiosity. She pulled out her phone and checked her personal banking app. The screen glowed with numbers that could make a grown man faint. Billions with a B. But she closed the app and returned to the dishes, her hands wet with soap and secrets. She let Obinna think she knew nothing. She let him believe she was just a simple village wife who could not read bank statements or track his lies. Meanwhile, she watched and waited. She saw him come home late, smelling of foreign perfume. She heard his hushed phone calls in the bathroom. And she smiled because she knew something he did not. The trap was already set. One evening, Adanna heard crying from Chief Aguyi's study. She pressed her ear against the door and listened. "We are finished," the old man sobbed. "The banks are calling in our loans. Aguyi Global is drowning in debt." Obinna's voice was cold. "Then we sell some properties, Papa. We will survive." "Survive?" Aguyi's voice cracked. "Your grandfather built this company with his bare hands, and now it will die because you spent our money on that woman." Adanna knew exactly which woman he meant. Zainab, the mistress with expensive taste and no conscience. She heard Obinna slam his hand on the desk. "That woman makes me happy, Papa. Something my wife never could. A man needs beauty, not a village pig who cannot even apply makeup properly." Adanna stepped back from the door. Her face showed no emotion, but inside, something clicked into place. The final piece of her plan had arrived. It was time to move from defense to attack. The next morning, Adanna took a taxi to the roughest part of Yaba. She wore old clothes and covered her hair with a faded scarf. She walked into a local mama put restaurant where the benches were wooden and the floor was concrete. In the corner sat barrister Fola, her lawyer, a woman sharp enough to cut through lies like butter. Fola did not stand or wave. Nobody could know they were connected. Adanna sat down and ordered eba and egusi soup. While eating, she slid a brown envelope across the table. Inside is every detail of Aguyi Global's debt structure. The banks, the amounts, the collateral. I want you to buy it all, every single kobo. But stay anonymous. Use shell companies, foreign names. Make it impossible to trace back to me. Fola's eyes gleamed. And when do you want this done? By end of week, Friday morning. Fola smiled. Consider it done, Madame Lioness. But Adanna did not just wait for the lawyers to work their magic. She became an active hunter. She discovered that Obinna was stealing from his own father's company, moving money into secret accounts to fund his lifestyle with Zainab. Adanna could have confronted him. She could have told Chief Aguyi. But instead, she did something much smarter. She compiled every transaction, every fake invoice, every embezzled naira into a detailed file. Then she sent it anonymously to the bank's fraud department. Within days, the bank froze Aguyi Global's remaining credit lines. They demanded immediate audits. They threatened legal action. Chief Aguyi aged 10 years in 1 week. He could not understand how everything was falling apart so fast. But Adanna understood perfectly. She was not just waiting for Kama, she was driving the bus herself. And Kama was sitting right beside her, taking notes. Obinna's birthday came in July. Adanna saved money from the small allowance she was given for housekeeping. She bought him a modest but respectable car, a clean Toyota with good mileage. She presented it with a bow tied on the hood. "Happy birthday, my husband," she said softly. Obinna stared at the car like it was a diseased goat. This is what you got me? A Toyota?" He laughed cruelly. "My friends drive Range Rovers and you bring me this village taxi." His friends joined the laughter. Adanna said nothing. That weekend, Obinna gave the car to Zainab. "At least someone will appreciate it," he said. Adanna watched the car drive away and made a mental note. When the time came to make her list of humiliations, she would not forget this one. Every insult was a brick. She was building a wall so high Obinna would never climb over it. And when it was complete, she would lock him on the other side forever. Friday morning arrived like thunder. Adanna sat in a glass office on the 20th floor of a bank tower. Around her sat 5 lawyers, 2 bank directors, and a government witness. Papers covered the table like fallen leaves. "Sign here, Madam Okeke." Barrister Fola pointed to the final document. Adanna picked up the gold pen and signed her real name. Not Adanna Aguyi, Adanna Okeke. The name that controlled oil wells, shipping companies, and now one failing manufacturing empire. "Congratulations, madam," the bank director said. "You are now the majority owner of Aguyi Global, including all assets, properties, and debts. The mansion, the cars, the company headquarters, all yours." Adanna stood and looked out of the window at Lagos stretched below like a sleeping beast. "And they have no idea?" she asked. Fola smiled. "None. The transactions were routed through 4 countries. They think a foreign investor saved them. They will learn the truth tonight." Adanna nodded. "Good. Let the dinner begin." That evening, Adanna arrived at the mansion just as the guests were being seated. She wore the same simple wrapper she always did, her hair tied back in a plain bun. But tonight she walked differently, straighter, calmer, like a queen entering her own palace. The dining hall glittered with gold decorations. 200 guests filled the chairs, all dressed in their finest agbadas and gilis. At the head of the table sat Chief Aguyi, his face tired but smiling. Beside him sat Obinna, and beside Obinna, draped in silk and diamonds, sat Zainab. She wore the 5 million naira necklace like a trophy. When she saw Adanna, she smirked and touched the diamonds, making sure Adanna noticed. Adanna noticed. She noticed everything. She noticed the necklace she unknowingly paid for through Obinna's theft. She noticed the smug look on Zainab's face, and she noticed the rope that was tightening all of their necks. They just couldn't feel it yet. Chief Aguyi stood to give a speech. His voice boomed across the hall. "My friends, thank you for coming to celebrate my 70 years on this earth. I have built an empire.
I have raised strong sons, and tonight I clean my house of the weak branches so the tree can grow stronger." His eyes landed on Adanna. "Some people enter your life like flies in your soup. They don't belong. They make everything taste wrong. Tonight we wash the soup clean." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Adanna sat perfectly still, her hands folded on her lap. Chief Aguyi raised his glass. "So here's to new beginnings, to family, to strength, and to finally removing the burdens we should never have carried." The guests cheered and drank. Obinna stood next, his chest puffed with pride. "Papa is right," he said. "It is time to speak truth. I married a woman who does not fit our world. Her village curves are an eyesore to my modern eyes." Obinna's voice grew louder, crueler. He said, "Look at her," he pointed at Adanna. "She sits there in her cheap wrapper, pretending to be one of us. But we all know the truth. She is a poor pig from Enugu
Who got lucky when I felt sorry for her." The guests gasped, but some also giggled behind their hands. Obinna was just warming up. "I tried to train her. I bought her good clothes, but she refused to wear them. I took her to salons, but she came back looking the same. She is hopeless, an embarrassment." He reached into his jacket and pulled out the bus ticket, tossing it across the table like garbage. "So tonight, I give her this gift. A one-way ticket back to the village where she belongs. Go home, Adanna. Go marry a yam farmer. You are never fit to be an Agui." Zainab clapped her hands. "Finally, good riddance." The room erupted in cruel laughter. And that is when Adanna stood up. Adanna rose slowly from her chair. She did not touch her purse or gather her things. She simply stood, calm as a still river, and raised one hand. Then she snapped her fingers. Once, the sound echoed. Immediately, the waiters stopped serving. The caterers froze in place. The musicians stopped playing. Every single staff member in the room turned and faced Adanna, standing at attention like soldiers before their commander. The laughter died. Confusion spread like spilled wine. What is happening?" Chief Aguyi whispered. Adanna snapped her fingers again. The head waiter, a tall man with a serious face, stepped forward and bowed deeply. "Madam Chairperson, what are your orders?" The room fell into complete silence. You could hear hearts beating. You could hear expensive jewelry trembling. Obinna's face turned white. "Chairperson, what is this nonsense?" Adanna smiled, that same lioness smile. "Oh, my dear husband, did you really think these people worked for you?" Adanna reached into her small purse and pulled out a slim tablet. She tapped the screen once and turned it toward the head table. "Before I leave for Enugu, as you have so kindly suggested, let us discuss something. Asset 44B. Chief Agui's wineglass slipped from his hand and shattered on the floor. His face turned grey as ash. How do you know that name?" he whispered. Adanna's voice was soft but cut through the room like a bleed. Asset 44B is the internal code your company uses for its debt portfolio, the loans you took from 6 different banks, the ones you used foreign shell companies to hide, the ones that are crushing your company like a python squeezes a rat. Obinna tried to laugh it off. You know nothing about business. You can barely read English, let alone understand corporate debt." Adanna tapped the screen again. Numbers appeared. Account numbers, loan agreements, signatures. "I understand enough to buy it all." Chief Agui stood up so fast his chair fell backward. "What did you say?" His voice trembled like a leaf in a storm. Adanna spoke clearly so every guest could hear. "I said I bought your debt. All of it. Every loan, every collateral agreement, every piece of paper that says Aguyi Global owes money now says it owes me." The old man grabbed the edge of the table to steady himself. "That is impossible. The buyer was... They told me it was a foreign investor, a company from Singapore." "Okeke Holdings Singapore," Adanna said, "a subsidiary of Okeke Oil International, which is owned by Okeke Family Trust, which is controlled by me." She placed the tablet on the table. On the screen was a signature, not Adanna Aguyi, Adanna Okeke,
the richest family name in the East. Obila's legs gave out. He collapsed back into his chair. Around the room, guests pulled out their phones, frantically searching the name Okeke. Their faces went pale as they realized what it meant. The main doors of the dining hall opened. Every head turned. A man walked in wearing an expensive suit and carrying a leather briefcase. His shoes clicked on the marble floor like a countdown. It was Mr. Chukwudi, the CEO of Zenith Bank. He did not look at Chief Agui. He did not acknowledge Obinna. He walked straight to Adanna and bowed deeply from the waist. Madam Chairperson, I apologize for the interruption. I came to confirm that all transfer documents have been filed with the Corporate Affairs Commission. The takeover of Aguyi Global is now complete and legally binding. You are the majority owner as of 3 o'clock this afternoon. He handed her a leather folder. Adanna did not open it. She already knew what was inside. Thank you, Mr. Chukwudi. Your efficiency is appreciated. The bank CEO bowed again and left.
The room was so quiet you could hear the chandelier crystals trembling in the air conditioning. Chief Agui looked like a man who had seen his own grave. Zainab jumped to her feet. This is a lie. She is just a village girl. She has no money, no power. This is some kind of trick. Adanna turned to face her. Would you like to see my identification card or perhaps my family crest? She pulled out a small gold card from her purse. On it was engraved the Okeke family symbol, a lion holding an oil lamp. Every important person in that room recognized it immediately. My father is Chief Emeka Okeke, Adanna said, owner of Okeke Oil, which supplies 40% of this nation's refined petroleum. My mother is Dr. Ngozi Okeke, former Minister of Finance. I am their only child, their only heir. She looked directly at Obinna. When I met you, I wanted to know if you loved me or loved money. So I dressed like I had nothing. I acted simple. I played the role you wanted me to play. Her voice grew colder. And you failed the test, my husband, spectacularly. Adanna addressed the room like a teacher addressing confused children. This dinner is over, and so is this family's stay in this house. Chief Agui tried to speak, but his voice cracked. This is my father's house. My grandfather built it with his own hands. No, Adanna corrected him. Your grandfather built it with a bank loan. That loan was absorbed into Asset 44B, and I now own Asset 44B. Therefore, I own this house. She turned to the head waiter. Please escort the guests to their cars. The evening is finished. The waiters, who were actually security personnel Adanna had hired weeks ago, began gently guiding shocked guests toward the exits. People stumbled out, some crying, some pulling out phones to call blogs and newspapers. This would be the biggest scandal Lagos had seen in years. Obinna grabbed Adanna's arm. You cannot do this. I am your husband. You owe me respect. Adanna removed his hand like it was a dead insect. Respect is earned. You threw it away. Adanna's eyes moved to Zainab, still standing there in her silk and diamonds. That necklace, Adanna said, take it off. Zainab clutched the diamonds protectively. No, Obinna gave this to me. It is mine. Obinna bought it with money stolen from his father's company. Money that I now control because I own the company. That makes the necklace mine. Adanna snapped her fingers again. 2 female security officers stepped forward. Madam, please remove the jewelry, one said to Zainab. We can do this peacefully or not. Zainab looked at Obinna for help, but he was sitting with his head in his hands, broken. Slowly, with shaking fingers, Zainab unclasped a necklace and handed it over. The earrings too, Adanna said, and the bracelet, and the ring, all of it was bought with stolen money. One by one, Zainab removed every piece of jewelry until she stood there, stripped of her pride, looking like what she truly was, just another woman who chose the wrong side. Obinna finally found his voice. He stood up, fists clenched. You think you can just throw me out? I will fight you in court. I will tell everyone you are a fraud. You will do nothing, Adanna said calmly, because everything you are wearing right now, down to your socks, was purchased with funds from companies I now own. Obinna looked down at himself, his designer agbada, his Italian shoes, even his wristwatch. Security,
Adanna called. "Please escort Mr. Obinna Agui out of this property. He is no longer welcome here." 4 large men stepped forward. Obinna tried to resist, but they were professionals. They lifted him like he weighed nothing. Wait, let me get my shoes at least." "Those shoes," Adanna said, "were bought with my money. Leave them." And so Obinna was carried out of the mansion barefoot, still screaming, still threatening, still believing somehow he could win. The heavy doors closed behind him with a final satisfying boom. He was gone. The pig had left the palace. Only Chief Agui remained, sitting at the head of the now empty table. He looked like he had aged another 10 years in 10 minutes. "Please," he whispered, "I am an old man. I have grandchildren. I have nowhere to go." Adanna sat down across from him. "When your son called me a pig, where were you?" The old man said nothing. "When he mocked my clothes, my village, my family, where were you?" I did not know," Chief Agui said weakly. "You knew," Adanna said firmly. "You sat there and watched. You laughed with the guests. You made a speech about washing flies from soup. You knew exactly what was happening, and you chose to say nothing." She leaned forward. "Silence is a choice, Chief, and you chose wrong." She stood up. "You have 1 week to remove your personal belongings. After that, this house will be renovated and used as a headquarters for a new division of my company, one that actually helps people instead of stealing from them." She walked toward the door, then paused. "Goodbye, Chief. Enjoy your retirement." Over the next 3 months, Adanna transformed Agui Global completely. She fired every corrupt manager who had helped Obinna steal. She audited every department and found more theft, more lies, more rot. But she also found good people. Workers who had been ignored and bullied, accountants who had tried to report fraud but were silenced, factory floor managers who kept production going despite having no support from leadership. These people Adanna promoted. She gave them raises, she gave them respect, she gave them the power to rebuild the company properly. And rebuild they did. Within 2 months, Agui Global, now renamed Okeke Agui Industries, was profitable again. Within 3 months, it had landed new contracts worth billions. The workers whispered about their new boss with admiration. "She is tough but fair," they said. "She listens. She sees us." Adanna walked through the factory floors every week, talking to people, learning names, fixing problems. She was not just a chairperson, she was a leader, and the company rose from the dead like Lazarus. 3 months after that terrible dinner, Obinna was seen riding a Danfo bus in traffic. His once perfect hair was rough and sweaty. His clothes were faded. The passengers did not know they sat beside a man who once owned 3 cars. He was going to a job interview at a small trading company in Ikija. He had applied using a fake name because his real name now brought only shame. The HR manager reviewed his resume with a frown. "Your experience looks confused. You say you managed a manufacturing company, but there's a 3-year gap. What happened?" Obinna lied. He said he had been traveling, studying abroad. The manager did not believe him. "We will call you," she said. The call never came. Obinna tried 15 other companies. Same result. Nobody wanted to hire the man who had humiliated himself so publicly. Finally, he got an interview at a mid-sized logistics firm. He did not know it was a subsidiary of Okeke Agui Industries. He did not know who would be conducting his final interview until he walked into the room. Obinna sat in a small chair facing a large glass screen. Behind the glass was a silhouette. The voice that came through the speaker was distorted, professional. "Mr. Agui, thank you for applying. Let me review your qualifications." Obinna's hands trembled. Something about the voice felt familiar. "It says here you have management experience. Can you describe a time when you managed a difficult situation with integrity?" Obinna stumbled through an answer, making up stories about leadership and values. The voice was silent for a long moment. Then, "Interesting. Because our records show that in your last position, you embezzled over 40 million naira, committed fraud, and abused your staff." Obinna froze. Who are you?" The light behind the glass came on. Adanna sat there, perfectly composed, wearing a business suit that cost more than Obinna's entire wardrobe used to. "Hello, husband," she said. Obinna tried to speak, but no words came. Adanna leaned forward. Application denied. Reason? Incompetent and cruel. The screen went black. So, let me finish this story the way all good folk tales should end, with a lesson. Adanna did not destroy Obinna because she was cruel. She destroyed him because he chose cruelty first. She did not humiliate Chief Agui because she was heartless. She did it because he stood by and watched evil happen without saying a word. Silence, my friends, is not neutral. It is a choice, and Chief Agui chose wrong. Today, Adanna runs one of the most successful manufacturing companies in West Africa. She has donated millions to schools in Enugu and Lagos. She funds scholarships for girls from poor families. She married again to a kind engineer who loved her in her simplest wrapper. As for Obinna, some say he works as a driver now. Some say he left Nigeria entirely, too ashamed to stay. But wherever he is, he carries one lesson with him forever. Never treat a person like a pig just because they are humble. You might be eating at a table they own. The end.